Welcome back to another FPL transfer tips. Today I'll be talking about the best players to buy, hold, sell and skip ahead of Game Week 30 in the middle of an international break. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down the comment section below, and also be sure to like the video. It really helps us out a lot. Check out the links in the description below for Spotify, Amazon Music and all the other podcasts. Leave a 5-star review. Follow me on those platforms. The same goes for Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and there are many more links for the FPL League, Draft Hound, and the Discord server, so be sure to check all of that out. You can see the most transferred in players on screen, and for those on the podcast, Salah is the most transferred in. I'll be talking about some of the most popular and under-the-radar picks heading into Game Week 30, so without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first buy is Cole Palmer. I think it's a very simple one. If you have Cole Palmer, I think he's even a captaincy choice in Game Week 30. And at the bottom of the fixtures there, you can see the Game Week 34 provisional fixture. So as things stand, Chelsea are going to blank. But according to Ben Krellin and Planet FPL, Chelsea will face either Arsenal away or Tottenham at home in Game Week 34, and that's what I've done for those teams that are currently blanking in Game Week 34, putting their provisional fixtures for that game week, so you have a good idea of what to expect in the future. Cole Palmer is a very template pick with over 34% ownership. That's only going to rise as we approach the deadline. He has 11 goals and 9 assists in his breakout season with an XGI figure of 13.55, 142 FPL points, and the other underlying numbers are quite decent. 37 key passes, 57 shots, and an XG figure of 8.41. 11 big chances. There's so much to like. I think Cole Palmer is one of the very few players who is essential on the wildcard or with free transfers for the remainder of this season, because Chelsea are set to have 2 double game weeks, either in Game Week 35 or 36, and also in Game Week 37 with no blanks on the horizon. So for me, Cole Palmer is a buy. As mentioned earlier in this video and podcast, Mohamed Salah is the most transferred in player at the time of this recording, and it probably will stay that way going into Game Week 30. And Salah has tremendous fixtures to wrap up this season. He's now back, ready to start games, and I talked about him a couple of weeks ago back in Game Week 25 and 27. I talked about skipping him back then, but I think Salah now is a very easy buy. He's arguably the best player to own from now until the end of the Premier League campaign. He has gone up in price the other day to 13.1 million, and his ownership is 23.6%. So any returns he gets for you now would actually be quite beneficial for your rank, but I do expect his ownership to creep towards 30% by the deadline. He has 15 goals and 9 assists. His XGI figure is ridiculous, 20.55, and 168 FPL points for the season, trailing only Saka amongst midfielders, and the other underlying numbers are ridiculous. 22 big chances, 19 big chances created, 50 key passes, and also 57 shots inside the box, 70 shots overall. You can read out any stat you want with Mohamed Salah, and they're all going to be very impressive. So for me, Salah is a buy, and as things stand, he's the top pick for the captaincy in Game Week 30. The final purchase for Game Week 30 is Rodrigo Muniz, who is in incredible form. He scored a brace against Tottenham in Game Week 29. If he had Muniz, you pretty much were guaranteed a green arrow. He outscored a lot of teams in Game Week 29, which is ridiculous when you say out loud. But the next 2 fixtures are away from home, and Fulham are better in home matches. Having said that, Sheffield United is still one of the best fixtures you can ask for, and with Muniz's form, you would back him to score in that match. His ownership is 4.2%, so this is a massive differential for you, and more importantly, a massive enabler who allows you to go for Salah, Saka, Foden, Palmer and Son in the midfield, whilst maintaining one of Haaland or Watkins at the very least in the forward line. He has 7 goals and 1 assist for the season. His XG is 5.03 and 69 FPL points so far. The underlying numbers aren't particularly great, but he's a 4.6 million forward, 7 big chances, 12 key passes, and also 43 shots overall. A lot of appearances did come off the bench earlier this season, so that needs to be factored in. But if you're looking for a budget forward, I know Chris Wood is still quite decent despite his injury concern. He came off against Luton Town with a knock after scoring, but I think Muniz is still a great option despite Jimenez and Breuer knocking on the door. This might be a controversial one, and I still think in the long term De Bruyne is a sell, because you have plenty of alternatives in the midfield who offer better value. They'll start more games consecutively and get more points, but for Game Week 30 specifically, I think De Bruyne could be worth holding on to against Arsenal, which sounds ridiculous, but the Belgian's record against the Gunners is incredible, and I would back him to be the difference maker for Manchester City if City were to have the edge in that fixture. And for me, they are the favourites for that match, and therefore De Bruyne is probably the catalyst or the main reason why they would also have that advantage. And if you look at his stats for the season, they aren't great because he hasn't played a lot of football. 1 goal and 5 assists, 8 big chances created. It's actually quite decent considering he hasn't played that many games or started that many. 9 appearances for the season overall in the Premier League, 27 key passes, but the other underlying numbers are quite poor. His XG is 1.02, his expected assist is 2.22, and only 5 shots inside the box and 18 shots overall. Man City's fixtures are incredible from Game Week 32 until the end of the season, but as discussed in the best wildcard team, Haaland and Foden are by far the best Man City options you want to go for, and then maybe add a third in the defence if you wish, because Pep Roulette is certainly a big problem in that area. And with De Bruyne, it's an even bigger issue, and I don't think he's a hold in the long term. But for Game Week 30 specifically, if you're one of the 17.7% of managers who have the Belgian, I think a great differential for you this week is to hold on to De Bruyne and enjoy his potential points against Arsenal. However, if you can sell De Bruyne to a Son or maybe to a Salah, I think that's the only set of moves I would consider, because in the long term they will pay off. But I have to say, if I had De Bruyne this week, I'd be holding on to him because I believe he'll do very well in Game Week 30. Some people are selling Solanke on the wildcard or even with their normal transfers, and I think he's worth holding on to with the upcoming 3 fixtures against Everton, Crystal Palace and Luton Town, including back-to-back home games. And in Game Week 34, Bournemouth are very likely to double according to Planet FPL and Ben Crellin, so it will be a double of Aston Villa away and potentially Wolves away. It's a decent double on paper, especially for the attackers, and I think Solanke is definitely a hold up until Game Week 35. There's a 70% chance of Bournemouth doubling in Game Week 34 according to Ben Crellin, and it's probably the most likely double to take place in Game Week 34. Even Planet FPL also agrees on that mark. Now, in terms of ownership, Solanke is quite template, 28%, 15 goals for the season, 3 assists, 24 big chances and 138 FPL points. Solanke has had an incredible season. He's the talisman for Bournemouth on penalties. There's so much to like. For me, Solanke is a hold. I know there are many other forwards like Isak, Darwin Nunez, who are going to become very popular in the next couple of weeks, but I would argue that Solanke is even better. Whenever I talk about Ollie Watkins, he's either a buy or a hold in one of these transfer tips videos or podcasts, and Aston Villa won't double from now until the end of the season, but they also won't blank, and Aston Villa have pretty poor fixtures from Game Week 31 onwards, but I still think Watkins is potentially worth holding on to. If you aren't going to downgrade Watkins to facilitate another move like buying in Salah, Son, Saka, Foden, or maybe an Erling Haaland, I'd actually consider keeping Ollie Watkins from now until the end of the season, but definitely keep him for Game Week 30 against Wolves at home. I can't stress that enough. You could make a case for selling him in Game Week 31 or 33 when Aston Villa have a visit to either the Etihad and also to the Emirates. You could sell him in one of those game weeks, but Watkins is capable of doing well against any team, and I also think he's a great option who could really deliver week in, week out. He's got the most FPL points of any player for a reason, 27 big chances, 16 goals and 15 FPL assists. That's why he's one of the highest owned players in this game, and the other underlying numbers are spectacular to say the least. I think Ollie Watkins is worth holding on to, but like I said, the only case I could make for selling him in Game Week 31 or 33 is to facilitate a move for another big hitter like Son, Salah, or maybe even an Erling Haaland who have better fixtures in the long term. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but for me, Ollie Watkins is a hold. In terms of fixtures, West Ham's next 5 looks very appealing, and you could make a case for holding on to Bowen, but as I've mentioned before, that midfield 5 of Salah, Son, Foden, Saka and Palmer is the optimal midfield 5 you can build, and not only that, you have alternatives like Anthony Gordon who could double as soon as Game Week 34 with great fixtures, even better than West Ham, so I think Bowen is a sell from that perspective, but if you can't upgrade Bowen to one of those midfielders, you could make a case for holding on to him against Newcastle and Tottenham. He's done well against them in the past, and the 3 fixtures after that look very encouraging according to the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating. Now, Bowen's ownership is 25%. He has 14 goals and 3 assists for the season, 18 big chances, 149 FPL points, and some decent underlying numbers to boot. If you look at his XG, 9.45 and 23 key passes. But West Ham have been very inconsistent, particularly in this calendar year. And if possible, if you can do Bowen to Salah, one of the other midfielders I've discussed throughout this video and podcast, I would recommend selling Bowen and making that upgrade. We don't know much about Doughty's injury. It is a hamstring problem and he could be out for several weeks, but we don't know anything definitive by Rob Edwards or the Luton Town medical staff. But you look at Luton Town's fixtures, the yellow flag, and also Luton Town's poor defence. I mean, there's so many reasons to sell Alfie Doughty, not to mention that he's part of 12 injuries and suspensions that Luton Town have. It's absolutely ridiculous. They are decimated at the back and also in all areas of the pitch. Now, Doughty as an FPL asset in particular has some very good and promising numbers. 1 goal and 9 assists for a budget defender is incredible, especially for a newly promoted club. His XGI is 5.74 and he has 85 FPL points. I think he's been very solid this season. His XG itself is exactly 1. His expected assist is 4.74. He's had 9 big chances created and also 57 key passes. There's so much to like with Alfie Doughty, but I think he is worth selling, and you can go to Lascelles now, who could actually start games consistently, with Sven Botman set to miss 6 to 8 months due to an ACL injury, so hopefully he returns very soon. You could also go for many other defenders I discuss in the best wildcard team, like Gusto, Bradley, not to mention Branthoy or any other Everton defender. And you could also look at the projected doubles in Gameweek 34, which I discuss in the best wildcard team video and podcast, and that's where you could sell Doughty to any of those defenders, even Gabriel, who's also yellow flagged, but he should be available for Gameweek 30 against Manchester City away. So for me, Alfie Doughty is a sell. One defender you might be looking at to replace Alfie Doughty with is Robinson, but I still think he's worth skipping. You look at the next 5 fixtures, they're pretty decent, especially the next 2, but Fulham are much better in home matches. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Fulham conceded against Sheffield United. I really mean that. Now, do I think Robinson's a bad option? Not necessarily. He has been very impressive in certain game weeks, particularly in 29 with that 11-pointer. He has 85 FPL points for the season and some decent underlying metrics like the expected assist figure, which is 3.22, and that's why he has 6 assists for the season. He's a massive differential. Now, in terms of Fulham coverage, I think Manice is by far the best option, but in the defence, you're looking at Leno or Robinson as the next best options overall. Andres Pereira played very advanced in that game against Tottenham, which could bode well for him from an FPL perspective, but I would skip Robinson because I don't trust Fulham defensively. I don't think they're going to keep many clean sheets on the road, and yes, at Craven Cottage they can be quite competitive and get some clean sheets along the way, but I don't think the fixtures are good enough to justify Robinson as one of your defenders when you've got Bradley, Gusto and all the other defenders I've mentioned in the last couple of videos, including the best wildcard team. So for me, Robinson is a skip, but because of that performance in Gameweek 29, he's going to be very popular this week. The final player covered today is Nicholas Jackson. He has 9 goals in the Premier League and a decent goal tally across all competitions, but he also has 9 yellow cards in this competition, 1 more, and he will be suspended for 2 Premier League matches. And it's not until Chelsea have played their 32nd league game that the threshold for the yellow cards increases to 15. So for me, Nicholas Jackson is a skip for that alone, not to mention you have so many better alternatives in the forward line. Haaland, Watkins, Solanke, Darwin Nunez, Isak, even Rasmus Højlund is a better alternative in my opinion, and there's probably a few more I've forgotten, like Manice as one prime example. Now, Jackson's underlying numbers are terrific. His XGI is 14.56, 87 FPL points for the season is quite decent, 23 big chances is insane, 53 shots overall with 45 shots being inside the box. There's quite a lot to like. Even the big chances created, 7 for the season and 21 key passes, but I think Jackson is worth skipping. Chelsea won't blank in Gameweek 34 according to Ben Crellin and Planet FPL. It will be either Arsenal away or Tottenham at home forming that fixture in Gameweek 34, and the fixtures before that look incredible, and also Chelsea will have 2 doubles from now until the end of the season. But in terms of Chelsea assets, Palmer is by far the best option. Then I'd be looking at Gusto, who could be a concern with Reece James knocking on the door and returning from injury. The same goes for Petrovic, who I really like, but you've got Robert Sanchez, who could return very soon. But I think those 3 are the best Chelsea assets to have from now until Gameweek 38, and I wouldn't go for Jackson. I think there are better forwards elsewhere, and the yellow cards is already a big put-off, so I would skip Nicholas Jackson. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And there we have it, 10 players to buy, hold, sell and skip, and you can see the most transferred out players on screen. For those who are listening on the podcast, De Bruyne is the most transferred out at the time of this recording, but I think he could be a very good option against Arsenal in Game Week 30 specifically. Having said that, of course, if you do sell him to Salah or Son or any other of the midfielders I've discussed, even Saka in the long term, that will pay off. But I'm just kind of doubting the timing of that because De Bruyne loves playing against the Gunners, and that could prove to be another big factor in the title race and also for FPL this week. Now, in terms of the projected Game Week 34 and 37 doubles, I talked about this briefly in the Best Wildcard Team video and podcast, but just for those who are tuning in right now and who are new to the channel, for Game Week 34, Arsenal are likely to play against Wolves away and Chelsea at home. You've also got Bournemouth, who could face Aston Villa and Wolves away. Now, Brighton are the only team that could blank from now until the end of the season. So their fixture against Man City is likely to not go ahead, and therefore Brighton could be the only team that blank. But they would have 2 doubles later on this season to compensate. And more likely, according to Ben Crellin, they would double in Game Week 35 against Bournemouth away and Chelsea at home. And then in Game Week 37, they would face Newcastle away and Manchester City at home. None of this is set in stone. They are projections, and a lot of it could turn out to be the right thing, but there could be the odd fixture here and there that doesn't turn out in the way we expect. But it's worth giving credit to Ben Crellin and Planet FPL for all the work they do. Then you look at Chelsea in Game Week 34. As I mentioned before, they're probably going to face either Arsenal away or Tottenham at home. Then you've got Crystal Palace with a double in Game Week 34 potentially, with 2 home fixtures against West Ham and Newcastle. Everton could have Nottingham Forest and Liverpool at home. Then you've got Liverpool facing Fulham away and Everton away. And the other 2 doublers potentially for Game Week 34 are Sheffield United against Burnley at home and Manchester United away, and Wolves having 2 home fixtures against Arsenal and Bournemouth. So let's see if that actually pays off. You also have the other so-called blankers as things stand for Game Week 34. So I mentioned Chelsea, who could have that fixture, a London derby there, but Man City could face either Tottenham away or Brighton away, and you probably saw it in the Kevin De Bruyne graphic. Man United could face Sheffield United at home or Newcastle at home. Then you've got Newcastle facing Crystal Palace away or Man United at home, and Tottenham, who could face Man City at home or Chelsea away. There's so much to discuss. In Game Week 35, as I mentioned, Brighton would have that double potentially, and also Chelsea would face Aston Villa away and Brighton away. And finally, for Game Week 37, I'll only list a likely double, so to speak, and that would include Brighton, which I mentioned earlier, and also Chelsea facing Nottingham Forest away and Tottenham or Arsenal. So that would be the double in Game Week 37 potentially, depending on how things move in Game Week 34. Then you've got Man City facing Fulham away, and then either Brighton away or Tottenham away. Then Man United facing Arsenal, and either Newcastle or Sheffield United, and all of them would be home fixtures, of course. Then you have Newcastle doubling as well potentially against Brighton at home, and either Man United or Crystal Palace away. And finally, Tottenham Hotspur with 2 home fixtures potentially against Burnley and Manchester City, but if not, it could be Chelsea away instead of that Man City fixture. There's so much to digest, and that's why all the graphics and all the projections are very useful from Ben Crellin and Planet FPL. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. How does that impact your chip strategy plans? Are you looking to free hit in Game Week 34 or 37? For those that used the free hit in Game Week 29 or earlier this season, how are you going to tackle it with maybe the wild card, the bench boost, or any other chips you have remaining? Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new on YouTube. Let's get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram for the latest FPL and UCL fantasy updates. Dylan RCM. You can also find me through the name FPL Dylan. There's also links to the Discord server, the channel memberships, the Patreon, and also the FPL League, Draft Hound. All of that is there. And also for Spotify and Amazon Music, follow me on those platforms. Leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 30 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.